Welcome to the UC MBA and Executive Education Masterclass series. Today we're talking to Dominik Hörauf about all things AI and creativity and innovation. Dominik, you're from Stuttgart, but I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here today. I'm a research associate at the University of Stuttgart Institute of Entrepreneurship and Innovation Science, where I've been working on the topic of researching artificial intelligence, mainly its influence on creativity, innovation, and innovation management for the past 2+ years. I originally studied engineering and over the last couple of years drifted more and more towards that artificial intelligence era, which is now really my focus on research. And apart from that, I'm co-heading a working group in a local industry association where we help medium-sized companies getting their strategies set up in terms of the new AI era that we're approaching right now.
Great, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to our discussion today for two reasons. One is it's going to become apparent why leadership is really critical in kind of managing AI in the organization, but also you get to look at the latest research in artificial intelligence every day, all day. So we're looking forward to you sharing all that knowledge, but also with a caveat, right? So all things AI at the moment would probably be outdated in the next 2 months.
Yeah, so we see a high level of volatility at the moment, lots of development going on. So basically knowledge is changing almost every day.
Yeah.
New things coming up, replacing other things. So it's interesting to watch, however.
And one of those really, really interesting things that you and I spoke about before is you looked at a study that looked at a lot of companies investing in AI, yet not really realizing the potential or the ROI on their investment. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So that's based on a statistic that we've just seen going on in Germany, where we had a startup fund sort of analyzing how their investments in AI companies are going. And they've had a particular interest in looking at those companies that had failed, trying to understand what's going wrong with them. And it became pretty obvious that for lots of companies, it's not clear what influence AI will have on their business model and how their business model should be organized in terms of artificial intelligence. So the problem that we saw in that study was that lots of companies at the moment are at the point where they do something with AI just because everybody does, but they lack a bit the clarity of what do they actually want to do and how are they going to earn money from that.
Right, so they just invest in AI because they don't want to fall behind.
Exactly, they don't want to fall behind. They want to show maybe their shareholders, their customers, look, we are innovative, we're doing something with AI. And that's what they are worried about, not so much about what do the customers actually need.
Right. So I suppose that ties in really, really nicely with the work that you do in innovation, right? And taking kind of an innovation forward approach to AI implementation in your organization.
Exactly. And artificial intelligence in that context can really play mostly two different roles. And understanding what role will AI play in my organization is the key to setting up your business model in a successful way. And those two roles that we witness is sort of like the originator role that AI can play for innovation, and on the other side is the facilitator role. And when we look at companies that are at a mature level, that exist for a couple of years, that have already successful products on the market, and then they use AI to enhance their products, that's sort of the facilitator role that we see. That's something that we typically see with existing organizations that are more into physical products, and then they do something in addition to that product to enhance it, and that's the type of innovation they do with AI. And then on the other side, we see the originator role, which is more young companies who build their entire product or service around AI. So their AI is the originator of that innovation that they try to bring to the market. And that definitely has implications on the business model you set up and the strategy you need. So what we believe is that if AI sort of just facilitates your existing product, you can probably try and find ways how to integrate that innovation into your existing organizational strategy. As compared to when you build your entire business model around it, you should really focus your strategy on AI and be clear about what role will this technology play in my business.
So interesting, and I want to get into that AI as originator in a minute, because I think there's some fallacies around that you'll clear up for us in a minute. But I think it's super interesting. The majority of my research focuses on existing companies trying to embed AI into their operations and their supply chain, and I've honestly found exactly the same, where you would have companies looking at either operations and streamlining operations and operational efficiency, or customer value enhancements, engagement, both actually for engagement, one for engagement with employees, one for engagement with customers. And then those companies sometimes also invest in kind of new revenue generating products and services. But that's absolutely the space that you're talking about now, is that AI as originator, as these new AI-born companies. And I mean, even looking ahead, I've heard about zero human companies, right? And AI as customers, and this really far into the future space. So talk to us just a little bit around that space and potentially some fallacies around setting up companies solely with AI.
Yeah. So I think one of the common misconceptions of people who set up a new company all around AI is they believe that they are running just another software company, which is not the case. And we see already the first statistics coming in of AI companies really struggling with some of the key figures that they should be able to deliver. And for example, we see now that the profit margins for AI companies somewhere between 50 and 60% as compared to software as a service companies, somewhere between 60 and 80%. Wow. And there are different reasons for that, but it's something you have to keep, you have to have on your mind when you try and set up a company just around AI. And one of the reasons, for example, is that even though what we see around media at the moment, it's mainly about generative AI, but there is much more to artificial intelligence than just the generative part. Sure. So lots of companies build their business about data analytics and in that direction. And when they think of a software company, they think they can scale it up pretty fast and then just sell their software to lots of customers. Now, when we're looking into analytics and AI as a business model, for example, it doesn't work that well, because you'd have to sort of adjust your algorithm almost to any customer in a certain individual way, looking at what's the data structure that company is using, etc. And so that kind of limits the profit margin that you get.
Very interesting. And it's really interesting to me too that you're based in Europe with very, very different data protection laws and privacy laws around that. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of kind of data and privacy in Europe versus here in New Zealand?
Yeah, so that is, well, some companies would for sure see that as a challenge in Europe. But on the other hand, what we see now is that the European Union has brought up the first AI law worldwide that we see that's going into that direction. And it's a very important goal of that law to protect sort of data of the public and in the public's interest. And that is actually quite important. But it certainly limits the options that AI companies have in terms of getting their hands on training data, for example. Right? And that's on the company side. And then we have the sort of customer side. And that's something that we all should consider when we engage with AI. What data do I actually upload? What am I willing to share? Really think about that. And looking at especially the training data component, where we now see a big lawsuit, for example, in the US, where the New York Times is really not happy that their data has gone into the training of some of the big language models. We don't have laws at the moment regulating this, but it's certainly something that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think that lack of that clear framework and guideline in New Zealand is making people take a kind of wait and see approach, because you just don't know what's going to come out. And if you do spend a lot of time and money on a particular product, whether that's going to infringe on some rights down the line. So I actually think that provides some clear guidelines for companies to move along. But at the same time, like you said, it inhibits some of the AI innovations happening out there.
Yeah, that's right. And the guidelines in law are one side, and then the guidelines that a company sets up is the other side. That's very important in that regard, and that should go hand in hand at some point.
Yeah.
So because what we see at the moment is lots of companies having more sort of like this, as we say, bottom-up approach to artificial intelligence. So that is, everybody in the company who is interested in that is just experimenting with different tools, trying how they can enhance their everyday work with AI. And with that, it sometimes happens that they do not follow regulations because they are simply not aware.
Yeah.
So if a company now sets up their own sort of internal policy that takes the law into consideration and moves more to a sort of top-down approach, saying, that's a tool that's okay for you to use, but please don't do this and that, that should lead to much more clarity in that regard.
Absolutely, I love that. So we now know that AI is different, not only in terms of margins and how you set it up from traditional software. We also know that we're seeing a very different approach to AI. Like you said, a bottom-up approach versus top-down, and there are some great risks in that. Have you seen some companies doing this really well?
Yes, so talking to lots of companies from different branches and different industries, we see some who are really pushing forward. For example, I've seen a pretty impressive case from an insurance company using image recognition tools to kind of pre-process some damage images from whatever car accidents, for example, and just try and enhance their workflow and their overall efficiency with that. So they are pretty far ahead with that, and they know exactly which way they are going. And then we see other companies at the same time who are not clear at all about if it will be even important for them to do something with AI. They have some people working with it, others not. We see levels of reluctance. And one of the reasons is that obviously with a technology that's just come around and is just getting adopted in a broad manner, we see a lack of know-how on so many different levels, and that extends to executive levels. So that is definitely something also we as a university should now look into and say, okay, is there anything we can do to kind of get that knowledge out into the industry?
Right, because I think this kind of lack of understanding and lack of clarity around what is actually possible with AI is causing a lot of fear, distrust, negative narratives, and you just hear these wild rumors going around about what AI can and can't do.
Exactly, and at the same time, however, we all use AI almost every day in our lives. We're just not realizing it, but it is there. Whenever we use an app to get us the best route to our destination, whenever we use an automatic translator, for example, that involves artificial intelligence. So it is basically everywhere, and so that's why we think that it's going to have an impact on almost any business. It's just not clear yet how is it going to look like.
Yeah. We've spoken about some of the fallacies around AI as an originator. Let's just circle back
to those fallacies.
Yeah.
So we have the problem of reduced profit margins that we see. What we also see is challenges regarding scaling of AI technologies. Some
unclear business cases
that are
yeah?
not clear exactly.
Yeah.
And some lack of know-how in management and leadership as well.
Yeah. And then I think one last major trend that came through in that study was lack of clear leadership vision and guidance from leaders, right? Yes. So this brings us to, I suppose, what this whole series is about, is making leaders better. Do you have any advice for leaders wanting to implement AI in their organizations?
Yes, and that is mainly connected to know-how again. And what's really a problem in communicating to employees that and how they should use certain AI tools is making it very clear what's going to happen, what's the consequence going to be for them, and also for the data that they may use for that. And that really requires that anyone who is involved in the leadership of that company really understands how those AI tools work. And that is something that at the moment we don't really see, because this enables them to really manage expectations among their employees. Say, this is what you can do, and these are the limitations, and you have to be clear, and you have to be able to communicate that.
Right, clear communication around it, where we're just seeing people, and leaders in particular, being very quiet about it, hoping that it'll either go away or, too scared to make a decision. But actually it's causing a lot of anxiety and stress within the workforce, and it's almost forcing this bottom-up approach, which you mentioned earlier, which is risky, right?
It is risky, and connecting to what you've just said, we can be pretty clear and say that AI is now here to stay, and it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And we're going to see most of companies, if not all, at some point being influenced by that. So it is the time now to build that know-how and that clarity around it.
Excellent. It's a time now. Thank you, Dominik. Thanks for coming through.
Thanks for the invitation.